one of the pressing priorities at this 75th year is, of course, Ukraine. Last evening, we heard President Biden make some announcements about a new air defense package for Ukraine. So, Mr. Secretary, I actually want to start with that news. I hope you can help us unpack that and tell us a little bit more about the Ukraine package that we can expect at the summit.
Well, you heard the President yesterday talk about the work that we've done and other allies have done to put together more air defense systems for Ukraine, notably Patriots, but also many other systems, because we know that's the key to so many things. It's a key to defending Ukraine's infrastructure. It's a key to defending its people. It's a key to defending its forces. It's also key to making sure that we're unlocking the private sector and economic investment in Ukraine that will also be essential to Ukraine's success going forward. But people need to make investments in secure environments. So these air defense systems, we know, have been job number one for Ukraine and, as a result, for the alliance that's supporting it. But this is just part of a comprehensive package that we're putting in place, that we've actually put in place since before day one, to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to defend itself when it needs it. And I'm also pleased to announce that as we speak, the transfer of F-16 jets is underway, coming from Denmark, coming from the Netherlands. And those jets will be flying in the skies of Ukraine this summer, to make sure that Ukraine can continue to effectively defend itself against the Russian aggression.
So we also understand, coming out of the summit, we'll have announcements that there will be a new NATO command in Wiesbaden that will be very focused, building on the extraordinary work of the Ramstein Defense Contact Group to sustain capabilities for Ukraine, operations, maintenance. We'll have a NATO liaison officer in Kyiv. I mean, this is a pretty robust package that you're talking about. You said something when you last were in Kyiv on, I believe, May 14th. And you said, our strategy is that Ukraine must win. Is that package, and this is robust, but are the packages that NATO is putting forward, is it enough to fulfill that vision for Ukraine to win?
Yeah, I believe it is. And let's talk about two things. Let's talk about what winning means, what success is for Ukraine. And in my estimation, at least, success is a strong, independent Ukraine, increasingly integrated with Euro-Atlantic institutions like the European Union, like NATO, and that is able to stand on its own feet, militarily, economically, democratically. And what we see is Ukraine on a trajectory to do just that, militarily. We have an incredibly robust package that will be unveiled over the next couple of days at NATO that builds a very clear, strong, robust, well-lit bridge to NATO membership for Ukraine, including, as you mentioned, the first time NATO's dedicated a command to helping an aspiring country join the alliance. This, in and of itself, is extraordinary. Just a few weeks ago, President Biden signed our bilateral security agreement with Ukraine. At the last NATO summit, on its margins, President Biden brought together more than 30 countries to negotiate and now sign these bilateral security agreements. What does that mean? It means that for the next decade, country after country has vowed to help Ukraine build its deterrent and defense capacity. That sends the strongest possible message to Vladimir Putin that he can't outlast Ukraine, he can't outlast Ukraine's partners. So the military trajectory is clear. The economic trajectory is critical, making sure that private sector investment is being driven into Ukraine. Our former Secretary of Commerce, Penny Pritzker, has been leading our efforts with so many other allies and partners. We just had a very strong reconstruction conference in Germany. But all of this is about making sure that investment is driven to Ukraine. I'm convinced that Ukraine has tremendous capacity, first, to develop a strong defense industrial base for itself and for other countries, but also because of the extraordinary innovation of Ukrainian entrepreneurs, the Ukrainian economy, to develop a strong, robust economy. Of course, the air defenses are critical to make sure, as I said before, that investments that are being made, physical investments that are being made, are protected. And then finally, democratic deepening. The fact that the EU opened its accession process with Ukraine, the fact that NATO also requires, as Ukraine moves irreversibly along the path to membership, that it continue reforms, that's the strongest guarantee that the reforms that the Ukrainian people so strongly support will continue and will deepen. And that results in a Ukraine that is strong, that is independent, and that is the best possible rebuke to Vladimir Putin.
Mr. Secretary, I'm so glad you talked about the well-lit bridge, because I think an enormous amount of energy is being expended upon verbal gymnastics in some ways, the irreversible path, the well-lit bridge, all of these terms. But what you've been talking about, the actions, the robustness, that speaks louder than words.
That's exactly right.
That's the relationship with NATO. But why are we so caught up? Why can't there be greater simplicity and clarity about this incredibly close relationship that Ukraine will join NATO? Help me understand why we're using all of these very creative words.
Well, we have a lot of very talented people who have to spend a lot of time writing NATO declarations. We want to make sure they're fully employed.
So that's the secret.
So, as someone who's done that myself in the past, in all seriousness, by the way,
please.
Our colleagues are doing extraordinary work because, look, we have 32 allies. This is a democratic alliance, an alliance of democratic countries. Different countries have slightly different views on some of these issues. And part of our responsibility is to proceed with consensus. The greatest strength that we have, the most valuable currency we have as an alliance, is our unity. But that unity doesn't just happen. It's the product of conversation. It's the product of listening. It's the product of talking. It's the product of building that consensus. And it gets reflected in these documents. But Heather, you're exactly right. I think it's important to look at the words, but it's even more important to look at the actions. As I said a moment ago, the first time NATO's had a dedicated command to helping an aspiring country join the alliance. And that has very practical components to it that will, I think, speed Ukraine's accession to the alliance. And we talk about a bridge. It's nice to have an image, a metaphor. As my colleague Jim O'Brien likes to say, it's a bridge that's going to be strong, well-lit. And with this command, I think it'll be a short bridge, too.
So I'm going to sprinkle another historical quote. And this was by President Truman the year following the signing of the Washington Treaty. At his inaugural address, he said, and I thought this is a good definition, not quite that word salad that we were talking about, the main objective of the North Atlantic Treaty is to erase any possible doubt and uncertainty that may be lurking in the minds of potential aggressors. Is that package enough to deter Vladimir Putin on Ukraine? That's the question. Does that provide sufficient certainty?
Well, first, President Truman had the remarkable gift of speaking clearly, speaking directly, and we'll try to live up to that example as best we can. But look, the proof will be in the pudding. I believe it should. But at the end of the day, what is so important is delivering these practical results, showing that Ukraine has the capacity, that its partners have the capacity. I mentioned a moment ago the fact that the F-16s are on their way. The transfer is happening as we speak. They'll be flying in the skies of Ukraine this summer. That's another very important proof point because, again, it concentrates Vladimir Putin's mind on the fact that he will not outlast Ukraine, he will not outlast us, and if he persists, the damage that will continue to be done to Russia and its interests will only deepen. The fastest way, the quickest way to get to peace is through a strong Ukraine.